Hello, welcome back to Glass Half Empty Reviews. I'm the pessimist, and much like Internet Explorer, I'm incredibly slow in doing my job, and therefore I'm late to the game in all aspects of my life, including movies. So let's talk about some movies no one is talking about anymore because they're no longer relevant. For starters, did you guys know they made a live action Pokemon movie? I use the term live action loosely, as it's almost entirely CGI. For those of you unaware, Pokemon is something men in their 30s drive around the city to catch and battle on their cell phones. Oh, and I guess it was a popular TV show and manga too. But the question is it the very best, like no one ever was? Well, stick around and find out. But the short answer is always no. Keep in mind there will be spoilers for all these reviews. With that said, let's go. Off the bat, the first and most obvious thing to notice is where the majority of the budget went: Ryan Reynolds and special effects. I still think Ryan Reynolds was the wrong call, as he just comes off as a PG version of Deadpool. I was always team Danny DeVito personally, due to his voice fitting the whole film noir genre, and due to the big contrast between his voice and Pikachu. As for the special effects, eh, they were fine, I guess. The Pokemon designs were hit and miss mostly, and were knowingly used for awe moments, to not only distract the people from how bland their plot was, but also to hide how mediocre the acting was as well. I get it. For movies like this with a huge star and lots of CGI, you don't really have the money for a decent all-around cast, so you have to roll the dice on some young up-and-comers. Unfortunately, the filmmakers used a fire type on a water Pokemon. It was not very effective. Back to the story. It's your stereotypical detective film with predictable beats and plot twists. In fact, have you guys seen Zootopia? Yeah, it's pretty much Zootopia, without the charm, likable characters, and impactful themes. All that being replaced with a shit ton of Charmanders and Bulbasaurs. And then there's the big twist at the end, and well, it's a bit of a letdown if you ask me. Which you are, because you're watching this video. If you're trying to catch all the films this year, it might be best to not catch 'em all and skip out on this one. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Speaking of underwhelming, I also saw Spider-Man Far From Home. That's a bit more relevant, right? Other than having an interesting take on Mysterio, the movie suffers from what most sequels suffer from, which I'll call sequelitis. The symptoms include the overuse of comedy at the expense of heart, too much focus on characters that work better in smaller doses, and meandering around instead of having a more concise plot. The big quote unquote twist happens way too late in the movie, leaving the last third feeling rushed. Everyone knew Mysterio was the villain, so why did we have to wait so long? I would have much preferred a longer fight with Mysterio over the CGI monsters. Also, his plan to get Tony's glasses seemed a bit convoluted and seemed to only work out of pure luck. So let me get this straight. His plan was to befriend Peter, which would somehow make him rethink what Tony wrote to him, which would make Peter think to give Gyllenhaal the glasses over an actual Avenger, or to even just keep it himself? I don't know. It seems like Mysterio is more of a master of successfully predicting the actions of a teenager for no good reason, rather than of illusions. The movie also boasts the longest exposition dump in a single scene since Eyes Wide Shut. I mean, really? You couldn't have cut Mysterio's revelation in half and dished it out throughout the rest of the film? Like maybe Spider-Man accidentally runs into one of the people in the room and they spill the rest of the beans? Whatever. It's a fine superhero movie with some decent action and the best Spider-Man to date. But if the theater is far from your home, I'd say don't bother with this one. I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. Finally, let's talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the latest and hopefully last love letter to old Hollywood, directed by Quentin Tarantino. Though the amount of screen time for Bare Feet rose dramatically in this film, it might just be his weakest flick to date. Not bad, but far from his best. The acting's all top notch, the cinematography, editing, and music choices are all there. Hell, it even has Bruce Lee. So what's the problem? Well, it's the story, and lack thereof. The movie kinda just meanders about with no character arcs and logical progression. And once it kind of feels like we're getting somewhere, the movie skips 6 months later, with the narrator having to explain all of what happened while trying to desperately connect everything for the last act. It feels like a tell don't show scenario when it should be the other way around. Also, personal opinion here, but I think including the Sharon Tate storyline was unnecessary and served mostly to eat up time and be a bait and switch on the real life events. I think they should have just used the Mason gang and just changed up the targets due to the actions of Brad Pitt's character, while obviously putting a disclaimer regarding the real life tragedy. Though I find these to be pretty glaring issues, Tarantino just does everything else so well it's hard not to like his films, so I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Well, that's it, folks. Hopefully see you guys soon. But in the meantime, remember this. When it comes to movies, the glass is never half full. It's half empty.